Today on the Roundhouse, we're taking a look at an Ohio tourist line that's got a lot going for it. All aboard!
In days past, the roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is The Roundhouse.
Welcome to The Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Ozerak, and this is episode number 78 of our Trains and Railroading podcast, where we're taking a look at everything in the industry and the hobby. You name it, and we discuss it. Today, we're talking to Joe Mazur, who is the president and CEO of the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, located in the eastern part of the state, between roughly south of Cleveland to Akron. We're going to take a look at what makes their partnership with the National Park Service so successful, as well as the brand new ex-California Zephyr passenger equipment that they just purchased and that will be making its debut at Steam in the Valley for 2018. Before we get to that, though, a couple of things I want to get out there. First, I want to thank Matthew Betzner, our latest Patreon subscriber. He is a fireman, and that means he's donating $25 a month to supporting the show. So Matthew, thank you for your support going way back even before Patreon. I know you've been a long-time listener, so thank you so much for that. And if you have any spare change that you can send our way to be able to cover interesting events and news and stories such as this one, please check out patreon.com/theroundhouse. Your support means a great deal, so I really appreciate that. The second thing I want to cover is that a couple of episodes ago, you'll remember that I mentioned that I'm starting a youth model railroad club in my hometown of Meadville called the Meadville Model Railroad Club. And the program's going to be starting in October, but I wanted to have something unique going on to show these teenagers how connected model railroading and rail fandom and preservation is across the country and internationally. So I bought this HO scale passenger car online, and I named it Wandering Spirit as part of the Spirit Rail Car project. And the idea is to send this car to all 50 states. And its first destination ended up being a little bit of a detour in the sense that it went all the way to Australia. Listener Dan Smalley was visiting the States and met with me, and he said, hey, I could take that with me back to Australia. So who am I to turn down an opportunity to send this car off to Australia? So that's what we did. And if you go on Facebook on the Roundhouse, you'll see photos of Wandering Spirit at the Puffing Billy Railway. It is now on its way to the United Kingdom, so it'll spend some time there, but then we'll get it back to the States, and we're going to send it to as many locations as possible. If you want to learn more about it, there's a link on the roundhousepodcast.com labeled Spirit Rail Car. You can learn about its travels, and you can request the car for yourself, for your Model Railroad Club. Details online. Basically, the short version is, this is a project we're doing for fun, but just to show how many journeys we go on as a community and to pinpoint that to a passenger car. Again, theroundhousepodcast.com, and click on the Spirit Rail Car link for more information. Our guest today is at the helm of one of the most interesting tourist operations in the United States. He's the president and CEO of the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. Please welcome to the Roundhouse, Mr. Joe Mazur.
Hey, Nick. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show, Joe. Describe for people who aren't from the northeastern Ohio area or haven't experienced your railroad, what your railroad and operation is like.
Okay. Well, the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad was formed back in 1972, and it is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are in the middle, and we are actually between Cleveland and Akron, Ohio, and we run exclusively within the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So we have a partnership with the national park on utilizing rail that they maintain for us. And we as a railroad are in charge of the rolling stock, and we own 6 locomotives, diesel electric locomotives, and we also have 29 passenger cars. And we recently have acquired some new cars, which we can talk about a little later, which will take us passenger cars up to 33, or actually 32. But so we run year-round. We start in January and run through December. We have one of the largest Polar Express events from around the country, and there's 47,000 people ride the Polar Express, and that goes November through December. And so we have annually over 200,000 passengers that ride within that time frame. And the national park, let me tell you a little bit about the national park. There's 33,000 acres that make up the national park, and there are some unique pieces to the national park, and the railroad is obviously one of them. But the railroad came in and actually replaced the canal towpath, or the canal, and the towpath that was used to tow the boats up the canal has been converted to a walk and bike and run trail that goes the full stretch of the national park also. And on top of that, we've got the Cuyahoga River, which runs through the national park. So when you think about the national park here, which is pinched between, 2 big cities of Akron and Cleveland, you've got 33,000 acres that has a train, a running path, and many other paths to enjoy, but also a river, which real soon will be a recreational river. And so it's a very unique place to visit and a very unique place to experience Northeast Ohio. So we're happy to be here. We're happy to be a part of the national park, and some of the things that we do with the train that's specific to some things I just mentioned is that we have a bike aboard and kayak aboard and hike aboard program that allows people to go one direction on the train, get off, and either run back to their original destination, bike back to their destination, and because their bike would be put on the train, or even the kayak so they can enjoy the river. It's always very difficult to get your kayak back to the original destination. And so we have a specialized program that allows people to enjoy the park through those avenues. So there's quite a lot going on here. There is also since we're a nonprofit, we need a lot of volunteers. Well, a lot is an understatement. We have 1,800 volunteers that help run this organization, and those volunteers are the trainmen, the brakemen, the engineer, the conductor, and even the folks that help out in our train yard with some shop repairs. So we are a very large organization when it comes to the volunteers, very small when it comes to employees. We have 25 employees that help make it all happen. So that's a little bit of a summary of who we are as a railroad.
See, guys, I wasn't kidding when I told you that they were unique in the U.S. preservation scene. Now, let's break that down first by looking at your relationship with the National Park Service, because you figure both the railroad line and the park being established, both very long historic entities. How do you enable this cooperation between your two entities? What makes it work so well?
Well, that's a great question because, as I mentioned, they own our rail. So they acquired the rail for us. They maintain that rail and incur that cost so that we can focus on the rolling stock. The rolling stock, what they get engaged in when we start to actually have the passengers, that they have guest rangers, we call them rail rovers, that come on the train and start to, and going from car to car and explain to the kids and the adults, some of the aspects of what's in the park. There's several different programs that they run. So at any point in time, you can be riding the scenic, is what we call it, the scenic train. And there comes a rail rover to explain some of the animals, showing them some pelts, and just explain how the Cuyahoga Valley National Park was formed, and some of the benefits of why it is a national park and how certain animals have repopulated and come back. And it's just a really neat aspect of what they're able to do versus just catch people walking through the park. It's a captive audience on the train. We also have a train tracker app that's in the cars that allows you to listen to the history of the park as you go through it. So it's GPS coordinated. And matter of fact, you can download the app from anywhere, and as the train goes through the park, you can hear it, the different destinations and the different things that are in the highlights of the park. Now, we also run education programs that the park assists us with. So there's some curriculum that's been designed, and they offer up volunteers on their end and also park staff to help make that happen and help get as many students as we possibly can on the train. So we have thousands of kids every year that take field trips on the train, and that's in cooperation with the park. The other part that, besides the national park owning the rail, they also own our train yard and our offices. So that is a very big luxury that we have, that we don't need to incur that cost and also maintain those facilities. And they do a great job at that. So it's an extremely unique relationship that works for both and allows people to enjoy the national park from another view.
It seems to me like it's a great way of being able to share the responsibility, especially where you're both somewhat dependent on the other, because obviously the national park would bring in a lot of people in its own right, but having your operation there brings in whole other markets and gives people yet another way of being able to experience it. It's pretty unique how there is the river itself and then there's the bike path. It's just a very interesting melding of these different forms of transportation.
I absolutely agree. And one thing I left out in this relationship is the volunteers, and I mentioned them earlier, but when you think about a nonprofit, we rely on donors, rely on members, rely on ticket sales, but that wouldn't even come close to allowing us to pay the folks, the engineers and the conductors and the trainmen. So the component of having 1,800 volunteers filling those positions, and it equates to over 100,000 hours of volunteer service, is extremely important. And then you add and feather in the national park on picking up the expense of the rail. All of those components make what we have as a really one of the best and unique relationships that exist in the country. So it's very important that all of the pieces are there, because if one of those pieces weren't there, none of us would be there.
As part of your intro, you mentioned just some of the events that your operation offers throughout the year. Which are your personal favorites?
It's very difficult for me sometimes to pick one, so I can't do that. I'm going to pick two for you right now, and it's sometimes seasonal. And so today, my favorites are we hold wine events on our trains, and so we have the Vista Dome, we have the Silver Bronco, that is a very beautiful car that if you were in the car in the dome and enjoying wine and the scenery, it is truly just a unique experience, and I can't get enough of it. That is one of my two favorites. And the other one is something we call the family fun loop. Kids and families are looking for unique things to do. They're looking for wholesome things to do. And they're looking to get the kids away from the iPads and the phones. And so riding the train is a unique way to get that accomplished. But what we do is we take it a step further and we add some fun and games for the kids and the families to do. And so we've branded that the Family Fun Loop. We'll have character trains. So there's superhero trains where the kids dress up as superheroes. We have adult superheroes like Superman on there and Spider-Man. We also have Royalty on the Rails. Always this part of our Family Fun Loop. The Royalty on the Rails is the princesses. They dress up in their gowns and show up, and it's just a really unique way for families to get together, put all the electronic devices aside, and have some fun with their kids the way that we used to. And so that I love hopping on that car, on that train, and just seeing the smiles that the kids have on their face, and even the parents, and probably even more the parents that I enjoy when they're fully engaged in something with their kids rather than have kids have their phone in front of them or the iPad in front of them or being distracted by other things. Those are my two favorite at the moment. But when we get into the fall foliage here in the national park, it is truly unique. I believe that the foliage here in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park is as good or better than when folks travel all the way up to Vermont, and nothing against Vermont. I love Vermont. I've been going there for many years. It's just as good here, and it's such a unique way of seeing it through the train. So we run a fall foliage flyer. It's something new we started last year. So if you were to ask me in October, that would have been my favorite. But that's kind of what I've got at the moment.
I know that for a lot of our listeners, and maybe it's yours too, a favorite annual event is Steam in the Valley. And here we are in September of 2018, and you've got that coming up in a couple of weeks. And what a great partnership you have with the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society to be bringing nickel plate 765 in and getting to have Steam on your rails.
Absolutely. And I tell you, we've got them for 2 weeks, the 21st of September, 21, 22, 23, and then the following weekend. And we're going to add a few things to this year's excursion. And where we learned a little bit from some of the other railroads, we're adding some music and entertainment. We're asking folks to dress in the 40s, in their best 40s outfits, and come and enjoy a fun day with one of the, I'll call it the greatest beast in the U.S. Just because when you're there and you see that thing, and knowing its age and knowing what it's been through, and the sounds are just incredible. So you mentioned the 765, and I get goosebumps whenever I hear it, just because it's people in the valley. You could be a long distance away, and you're hearing that whistle go through the valley, and it's so unique versus our normal whistle. It's an exciting time in Northeast Ohio when it comes in. Our tickets are selling significantly better this year than in the past. So if anyone's interested, get online and cvsr.com and purchase those tickets and come and join us for one of the unique events here in the Valley.
It is so great. And we've previously covered a cab ride on 765 from 2 years ago on the show. And if you haven't heard that, I encourage you to check it out because we talk with some of the crew about what it's like to bring the engine here. The thing that I love is that because I live in northwestern Pennsylvania, I'm only a couple of hours away from you. And I certainly love the special events I've attended. But that said, even just going for your regular excursions is an absolute treat because of the services you provide. And just because it's great to be on an operation where you are going from one place to another. You talk about being between two cities, and so you have stations just south of Cleveland. You have the one in Akron. The fact that you get to be on a scheduled train that during your busier months, you're actually passing another scheduled train. There's not a lot of operations that can brag about that either. So there's that element of rail travel revisited, and the fact that somebody can take a morning train and then have a layover in, say, Akron, and then take an afternoon train back on the return.
Absolutely. We have a well-connected network within Akron. And if you get on at their Independence farthest north station and, like you say, take that down to Akron, you can get off Akron, and we actually have a partnership with the Akron Metro RTA. Free of charge, you hop on the bus, and it'll take you anywhere from the Children's Museum to the Art Museum to the zoo to all the amenities that are down in Akron, Ohio, which is actually got so many things going for it. And so that connection works well. Another great place to get off is right down in Peninsula, Ohio, which is a town that's been preserved, and it's kind of like going back to the early or late 1800s, early 1900s. It's just there's so many unique things you can do when you're on the train, and like you say, you get off, enjoy the area that you're at, hop back on, and it takes you back to where you got where you started. So it is a unique way to experience the park.
I'm curious, Joe, how did your career with trains and railroads begin?
Well, I've only been here a year and a half, but I've been a fan of the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad and also the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I have lived on both sides of the national park up until 5 years ago. I moved right into the national park so I can walk to the train and that unique towpath in that small community I mentioned as Peninsula. So I live in Peninsula, Ohio. That's the connection. And I'll tell you, that whistle, when you hear it in that town in Peninsula, it is very unique. I tell everyone that there's two sounds in the Peninsula that make me smile. One is the whistle and the other is the church bell, because it just takes you back in time, and it's just a unique place to be. So my connection is the fact that I love the park, love the railroad, and had a unique opportunity to step in the shoes of Craig Tolman, who did a great job here prior to my coming on board.
You talk about the importance of people who are involved, and I believe I read somewhere your paid staff is about 25 people, but then, as you said, you have the 1,800 volunteers. And recently, your organization just passed 1 million volunteer hours, so congratulations on that. And what do you attribute that success to? What is it that keeps the volunteers coming back?
The appreciation that not only we as an organization have for them, but the appreciation that our customers have. When they get on that train, they're smiling because they're getting on the train, and it's going to be a fun experience. They get off that train, and they're smiling even more just because the unique relationship and bond that they end up with that volunteer who's in their car. And the same goes for the volunteers. The volunteers, they absolutely love what they do. Their camaraderie amongst the volunteers and the staff is tremendous. And they just love, and I was about to say love coming to work. And it's not even work. They just love being here. And we're fortunate to have such a great group of folks that just give more than we could have ever imagined. It's a combination of, I think everything just comes together where everyone's happy. They have a unique skill set to engage the customers and make them feel welcome, and also have the ability to inform them of all the unique things about our historic cars and also the national park. So it's just a fun place to be, I'll say.
The structure that you have behind it is very important too, because you have a whole chapter dedicated to overseeing just how the volunteers are trained, how they're given the right opportunities to grow, how to develop that further. And so to give that its full focus, particularly because, as you said, you do rely on them so heavily, but the fact that you give it that kind of organizational respect, it seems to me like that's key as well.
It is. So the volunteers have their own organization. So they meet every month, and we're engaged in those meetings. They have committees, even a committee that is a travel committee. So the volunteers themselves plan trips around the country that go to different railroads and enjoy different railroads around the country. And they do a lot of things together. So they travel together, they have outings together and lunches and dinners and things like that. So it's a strong group of people that enjoy what they do and enjoy the companies of each other.
Part of what makes rail travel exciting is the image that it creates. And when you look at the 50s and 60s, the heyday of the streamliner, that was such a key piece of rail travel. Your operation is fortunate that your equipment consists of these streamlined locomotives and rail cars. What is it like for you to experience them, both in terms of enjoying them as a passenger? You mentioned your enjoyment of the wine trains, but also as how they bring back the nostalgia of rail travel.
Yes. So most of our cars, our passenger cars, are the Bud manufactured cars, and we try to stay within Bud manufactured cars and anything that we acquire. And so from a maintenance standpoint, they're mostly from the 40s and the 50s. It is very difficult to keep maintenance going. We'll actually spend about $980,000 just in maintenance and repairs this year. It's a very, very expensive venture, but it's very much important for us to preserve this type of travel. It's what a lot of folks get on to see. If we were a brand new train, new cars and everything, it wouldn't be as unique as it is. So when we run these cars and repair these cars, we try to keep that historic component in each car. Each car has its history too. So when folks and passengers get on, we like for our volunteers to explain to them that, this car used to run on the Florida line, or it is a California Zephyr car that used to run in the Silver Fleet. So there's a very important component of what we do here is the preservation of the historic travel. And, a lot of times that comes out just in our scenic runs, but also is brought out in all the special events that we hold. As I mentioned, the beer and the wine tasting events and anything else that we dream up to host in these cars, because we do have a significant amount of special programs that help keep us running.
There's something really gratifying hearing you talk about these cars as a fleet. It brings back the idea that these cars were so prevalent in rail travel 60 years ago, and here they are all under one operation doing what they were meant to do, transporting so many people. And the fact that then your maintenance crews get used to what it means to maintain that particular type of car. So there's a certain mechanical language to that element of as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I just mentioned, there's a cost associated with that, but it's fine. We have such a tremendous amount of support here in Northeast Ohio when it comes to members and annual funds and grants and things like that. Without that component, we wouldn't be able to do it. But we love being a historic railroad, and we would have it no other way.
So 1950s, many kids were getting Christmas trains under their tree set. Seems like for your operation, Christmas came a little bit early, and that you've recently acquired 4 new Bud cars, 3 of which are ex-California Zephyr coaches. Describe these cars and how are they going to benefit your operation?
Yeah, we are so fortunate to be able to purchase the train set that has been for sale for about a year now. It is currently under the California Zephyr rail charters owned by Bert Hermie and Roy Woolwich. So we acquired the Silver Solarium, which is a Vista Dome with a lounge on one end. And so we're ecstatic that that's a tail car. So it also has a bar and has some private rooms in it, but it is a great addition to our fleet, and it is an original California Zephyr car, and it is going to be brought in and joined with our Silver Bronco, which is also a Vista Dome, which was a part of the California Zephyr fleet. We, in addition to the Silver Solarium that we're purchasing, we're also purchasing the Silver Lariat. Silver Lariat is more of it's a Vista Dome, and it's all table cars with a full kitchen in it that will allow us to do some unique dining in it. And in addition to those 2 cars, we will be getting Silver Rapids, which is a sleeper car, and then a baggage car to go along with that. That used to be a former Jim Crow car. It's got some history to it. We are so fortunate to be able to bring the first 3, the Silver Rapids, the Silver Solarium, and the Silver Lariat, that were original California Zephyr cars, together with our Silver Bronco, which will give us 3 Vista Domes from the original California Zephyr fleet. And that is something that I have dreamt about since the day I took the job, was to do something like this, to be able to bring in and showcase the train travel in that unique fashion here within our 26 miles of rail. And so we're very happy that we're able to pull this off. We are not yet done funding for those cars. We raised about $700,000 and have a lot more to go. But it was very imperative that we brought them in when we did, and so we're happy about that. And what that'll do for us is First and foremost, they're going on that Steam in the Valley event. They'll be brought in September here, and they are ready for sale and on sale on the Steam in the Valley event. We will follow it up with our fall foliage train, the Fall Flyer, and then they'll go right into Polar Express. So if you think about it, it couldn't have better timing for them to be added to the fleet than really our three biggest events that we have all year long, which hit September through December. So when you talk about an ROI on a purchase, it was pretty much a no-brainer on what those cars would be able to bring to our fleet of historic cars, but also to the revenue to help us continue to maintain this organization. So they've got the two dome cars that we're acquiring, the Solarium and the Lariat, both have full kitchens in them, and that's been something we've been looking for, is that we can, rather than cater food, we want to cook the food and have just a much higher end dining experience. And we're looking to change some things after the first of the year and add a full-fledged dinner train like a lot of the other folks have, that has got some unique entertainment to it and really an upscale, enjoyable experience.
As you said, these cars are part of a much larger capital campaign. What are the other components of that campaign?
Okay, well, our capital campaign is slated for $5 million. We raised $2.2 million of that $5 million already, and the list of items that we are looking to that are part of that capital campaign is, first is our head-end power, and there were 5 phases to the head-end power, and so we're pretty much we're through, by the end of the year, we'll be through 4 of the 5 phases. And the California Zephyr purchase, originally when I got here, was slated for a one-dome dining car. And we turned that one-dome dining car purchase into 4 cars, as I just mentioned. The next unique car is what we're calling an edutainment car. So we're a 3.5-hour round trip through the national park. And sometimes, or more times than not, I should say, we've got young kids that are all psyched to get on the train, and after a certain amount of time, they get a little bored. And what we're going to do is create what we call an edutainment car, and it'll be a rolling children's museum, where we will bring the elements of the national park into the car, kind of like the Rail Rover I discussed a little bit earlier, where there'll be interactive things that the kids will be able to do in the car to help them with the whole 3.5-hour trip, and also help the parents in entertaining the kids. So it's a unique concept for us, but when we mention it to the parents, their eyes light up and they're so excited, and they're wanting to know how fast this car can join in on our scenic. So we're excited about that, and we're hoping that car will be ready to go mid next year, by June, July next year. The next is the ADA dining car. We currently have a dining car that is not ADA accessible. A wheelchair cannot get into the car, and so we're going to completely revamp one of our dining cars, open up the entrance so that our ADA coach car is next to it, so the lift is there, lift them into the coach car, and they can come right into the dining car and enjoy our unique dining experience like they have not been able to do in the past. And the last component is fleet preservation. It's a $1 million line item that is very much needed for just the unique improvements that we have slated. We call it fleet preservation. I could also call it deferred maintenance. So in these cars, as you know, they're very expensive to maintain. And then there's been some deferred maintenance that is very important for us to get caught up on. And so that's kind of what that fleet preservation. It could be anything from a restroom redo to an HVAC unit that's redone or seats redone, those types of things. So it's more of a blanket line item. But that totals our $5 million capital campaign.
Because you're in the midst of this fundraising, and I imagine that you're doing a lot of grant writing and seeking good sponsorships and partnership opportunities, when you're presenting this railroad to non-railroad entities to build these things up, where do you see the conversation at? What is the interest level in this day and age for being able to fund the history that you're looking to give people an experience on?
That's a great question because I have, again, only been here a year and a half. I've known the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad as a strong brand, but when I go and meet with funders and I go and meet with individuals, and even when I just walk up to somebody and I mention I'm from the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, their eyes light up. They love the train. And so when we tell them of our needs, I won't say it's easy, but I'll say they're very open to what we're doing and very willing to support our programs. So the community, Northeast Ohio, is a very giving community and very supportive of what we do. And I'll say it again, our brand is stronger than I thought it was. And I thought our brand was strong. And even when just as recent as yesterday, I introduced myself as somebody from the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. And the first thing they say to me is, when are those cars coming in? So they know that our Zephyrs are coming in. They know what's going on with us. They love what we have planned for the future. That's Northeast Ohio embracing a great brand and a great organization. So we're happy to be where we're at, and we're blessed to have such great people who live in this community.
Your organization has established some really good partnerships, it seems, as well. So having connections to your local businesses and government entities, you talked about having the Akron bus service as something that's built in to the rider experience. That to me says that there's a lot of history and respect for what you're doing. And so that helps you to build off and allows you to do different events and different partnerships than you've seen in the history of our organization, or different than what people are doing around the country in rail preservation.
Yeah. And I'll even tell you that there are people that are petitioning us to stop in their community. And I'm thinking, wow, they've gone through and gotten the support of their community for us to stop, have put another stop so that we can allow their folks to get on and our folks to get off. We also have the folks in Akron who are trying to figure out how do we do more with the railroad. Again, it's just a really fun time to be here with the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, and the outreach is just incredible. And we're blessed to have folks that love us the way that we are and also know that they're here to support us on the future and the endeavors we're looking to get into.
In terms of what you may be able to do in the future, I remember from many years back being able to take your trains not just between Independence and Akron, but also to Canton. Is there perhaps an opportunity in the future where you may be able to resume some sort of Canton service?
So that is another community asking us to come back down to Canton. And the rail there from Akron to Canton are owned by Akron Metro RTA, and they would need a significant amount of upgrade and repairs to put them back into service for us. And in the past, when we went to Canton, the national park was maintaining the rail, from what I understand, because it was way before me. And they're just not in that position anymore, and it's not in the park. It really, for them, doesn't fit their model. And so the challenge now is, because we're reliant on the park maintaining the rail, we don't maintain rail within our operations. It doesn't look like in the near future we will head down to Canton, but there is significant amount of growth in the Canton Football Hall of Fame. They're looking to spend, I think it's nearly $900 million in order to build up the Football Hall of Fame and make it a national attraction. And so as that continues to grow, so potentially will be that interest on the Football Hall of Fame in Canton and Stark County's interest in having us come down there, and maybe there'll be a solution to that. The other opportunity that we see that could be way out in the future, and I say way out because it's it's a lot more difficult to make this happen, and that would be to go to Cleveland. The railroad started by a gentleman who wanted to bring people from Cleveland to what's called Hale Farm here, which is part of the national park. And so we have an interest in getting back up to Cleveland also. The population in Cleveland is significant. It has rebounded tremendously, and there's so many great things going on in Cleveland. And the number of residents have grown. So we're interested in going that direction too.
Looking at the near-term future, you mentioned for 2019, one of your priorities is to be able to use the new equipment to offer a revamped dining train experience. What are some of your other goals for 2019, perhaps 2020?
Well, let me think here. That's a good question. We have a challenge in that we run in a separate consist, a separate event train that had coach cars on it, and we have had beer and wine events on the coach cars. And those coach cars aren't the best place to hold those types of events. As you can imagine, you're holding wine and you're holding food that we're giving you, and you're sitting essentially just in a seat with no place to set that stuff down. Our goal is to get away from coach cars on entertainment type events like that. And so we're looking at our schedule so that and the amount of cars that we have that are tables cars, dining cars, or multi-purpose cars, non-coach cars. And how do we create a consist that has enough tickets to accommodate the needs of those events and make that experience that much better for our customers? We will also take and add entertainment and increase that experience a little past where it is today. We've got a lot of happy customers when it comes to hopping on a wine train or a beer train, but we feel that we can continue to increase that experience through their being at a table, but also having entertainment of music and things like that. So Steam in the Valley is a good example. We're adding music at the depot. We're adding music on the train, and this is live entertainment, and we're asking people to dress up. So there's some things that we're looking to do to take what we do good and make them even better. And so the dinner train is another example of, we have dinner on the train, but it's more catered. There's not much entertainment or any entertainment tied to it. So we're looking to blow out a couple of things that we currently do to see how we can impact the ridership and the experience of the customers. It'll be more of that. Rather than trying to create new events, we want to take the ones that we do and make them even better.
With this new equipment, you've talked about the domes. You also have the Silver Rapids, which is a sleeper. Is that going to be left in its original configuration and somehow play into a particular tier of travel, or do you have other things in mind with how that can factor into your plans?
So when we were looking at, in our capital campaign, we were looking at a dome dining car. Now we've got 2 dome dining cars, but what came with it is a sleeper. Never did we think we would acquire a sleeper, but it was part of the package, and we said, okay, we'll take it. We have that available right now on our Polar Express ticket sales, and they're on sale right now. We also have it on our fall flyer, and it's selling well because people like the experience of going back in the day of train travel, and overnight accommodations are some things that people have never seen before. So we pitch it and describe it as a suite. So come and enjoy the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and sit in your own private suite. We didn't know how it would translate. It is working quite well for what we're using it for on the fall flyer. And some of the things that we're looking to do is to take it and use it for kids with sensory issues. So right now, kids with autism really can't handle being on a car with 80 people screaming at the top of their lungs when they come into the North Pole on the Polar Express. And that just doesn't work. Last year, we experimented with a quiet experience in one of our roomettes with a couple of our roomettes with a couple of folks with children with sensory issues and autism, and it just went over great. So this year, we're partnering with the Autism Society and allowing them to use the sleeper car and even the Silver Solarium, because it's got private suites in it too, so that kids that couldn't normally enjoy Polar Express will now be able to enjoy Polar Express. And, as we hold the cars and use them, we'll find other uses and opportunities with them. But today, that's what we know of what's starting to work or will work.
And it's great to have it in your fleet, because then as you're figuring out how do you continue to enhance the events that you're already hosting, that's something that then it becomes another tool in your belt that then, hey, we can use this car in this way, we can use that in that way. And then the way that in which that unfolds gives you a lot more possibilities, especially where you need the cars to be somewhat flexible to allow you to do different things for different events.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Last question I have for you, Joe, is that you have so much going on at the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. At the end of the day, what do you enjoy most about your job?
As any job I've ever had, I enjoy the people. I enjoy assembling a team that works well together. It's the people that make the place, and it's the team that makes the organization strong. And the team that we have here, I will put up against any team across the country. They are hardworking. They all work together. And in a historic railroad, you always have issues. And what they do is they dial right into the issues. They fix the issue, and we move on. But we have a strong team, and it's the people that I enjoy working with. And those people include and that team is not only the staff, it's the volunteers. That's what I enjoy. I once had a job where I worked from home, and I couldn't stand it. I did it for a year, and it was the worst thing I ever had to do. And that's because I enjoy the interaction with people. And I hop on the train as much as I possibly can. If it's even a hop on, grab a hot dog and hop right off before it leaves the depot. But I'm there to say hi to the volunteers and thank them every time I get a chance. That's the people that make up an organization, and we've got a great, strong group of people.
You have so many people that you get to interact with between your team, your volunteers, your passengers. That has to be massively rewarding.
It absolutely is. It is. It's great to see a commercial airline pilot, as a trainman or as an engineer, and he's not retired. He's still working, and he finds time for us. County prosecutor who has time for us in between working. And then you got so many retired folks from all diverse backgrounds. They come here and help make our passenger experience the best it can be. So it is very fun to learn the different backgrounds of all the people that help us accomplish our tasks and our mission.
Their website is cvsr.com. If you're listening to this in September 2018, be sure to check out Steam in the Valley coming up, as well as some of their winter events. If you're listening to this at any other time of year, well, check them out anyway in Northeast Ohio. It is a fantastic experience. In fact, actually, I just had a coworker who was so happy because she got to take her family out there. She was asking me questions because she knew I was the rail fan at work, and had an absolutely fantastic time and had nothing but glowing praise for how friendly the crew was, how great the sights were. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the work that you do and sharing the railroad with everyone.
Thanks for having me on, Nick. I really appreciate it, and look forward to meeting you one day here at the Valley.
I look forward to that too. Thank you so much.
And now, the question of the day.
Recently on the Roundhouse, we were talking to Mike Bast, who is one of the founders of the Allentown and Auburn Railroad, which is a brand new tourist railroad, only about 3 years old as of 2018, and asking what it takes to make a tourist railroad succeed in the 21st century, especially a brand new one like theirs. So I asked you guys, what's your favorite tourist railroad? And obviously there were a load of responses, especially on social media. First, from the Roundhouse Podcast website, Nicholas Hofke writes, being a rail fan for many years, seeing it grow, and now seeing their dream of freight operations come true, I would definitely have to say the Allentown and Auburn itself. Excellent choice. I'm certainly hoping to visit their operation perhaps sometime next year. I've heard so much about it, especially as they get their steam locomotive restoration underway. Next, on Facebook, we had Matthew Kemper say, I'm surprised that no one said Nevada Northern Railroad yet. The Nevada Northern uses their original track, original yard with the original buildings all in the yard, plus 95% of the equipment there is original to the railroad. It is in Ely, Nevada, a small town 240 miles from anywhere. When you get to the railroad, you literally feel like you've just teleported back in time. I've seen a lot of great things come out of Nevada Northern, so Matthew, that's a good recommendation, and that's also one that I'd like to check out in the not-too-distant future. That preservation aspect, both natural and what they've done as a tourist operation, is really incredible. Isaac Miller writes, Hocking Valley Scenic Railway, where I proudly volunteer. And similarly, Julie Caton writes, well, I'm biased since I work here, but the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad. In fact, a lot of you said, well, I'm biased, but insert railroad name here because I work here or I volunteer here. But that's great that you have so much pride in what you do and that so many of you are active in volunteering with a local tourist railroad or museum. I think that's fantastic. Your question of the day for this episode is, what is your favorite streamliner? Let me know on the roundhousepodcast.com, links to social media, links to the Spirit Railcar Project. I encourage you to check that out. And if you'd like to request the car, the form's there as well. Thank you guys for listening. And remember, as always, that the Roundhouse is our house.